Hello, folks. Welcome back to World War II TV and another short myths show. I was a bit bored this afternoon, so I thought I would do one of these. And we're talking about snipers. Every World War II book I've ever picked up, I think, has a section where, and Jim was killed by a sniper, and we fell back because we were under sniper fire. Every movie, World War II movie, seems to have a sniper scene. Think Anzio, think the story of G.I. Joe, think Saving Private Ryan. And it's become a very commonly understood factor that all units in World War II had snipers, and snipers were responsible for, countless deaths, both friendly and enemy. So let's look at these myths, and I've got some slides to support this, and welcome everybody. So the first thing is what the hell do we mean by a sniper? Because it's a word that we use now in 2023, perhaps differently than we did 80 years ago. And this is what we think of. We think of the specialist soldier taking long-range shots of 1,000 yards or more with a massive, great scope, out on their own, often in a ghillie suit is the sort of British name for the specialist sniper clothing, sometimes with a spotter, sometimes not with a spotter. And these are the guys out there doing all wind calculations, blah, 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 looking through their scopes. And there's video games, there's all sorts of media platforms that include this idea of the sniper. And so like with lots of things in World War II, we have to examine that the word means different things to different people. And one of the reasons I was prompted to do this one is we were talking yesterday about hedgerows, and sniper has become a catch-all word. We use it like Tiger tank, like 88, like Spandau machine gun, that kind of thing. So I've looked at some data. So where snipers were definitely used in World War II is the Eastern Front. We've all seen Enemy at the Gates. We all picture these duels between the German sniper and the Soviet sniper. And there are some legendary stories. We've covered a couple on World War II TV of particularly the Soviet snipers, lots of female snipers, and they're racking up death tallies of hundreds of enemy soldiers killed. And this is a trope we are stuck with about the Eastern Front. But let's look at some data. I'll put this together here. So another image of Soviet sniper team there. So in the Red Army, 428,335 individuals, including partisans, are believed to have received some kind of sniper training. Now, I'm pretty much always putting inverted commas around sniper because, as I will explain later on, often when we're talking about sniper, we're not talking about sniper. We're talking about a designated marksman or a sharpshooter. We're not necessarily talking about sniper in the modern understanding of the word that I just kind of explained, okay? Now that, when you look at that data there, sounds like a lot, right? Nearly 500,000 people are believed to have had some kind of sniper training. But let's look at that as a breakdown of the entire Soviet army, the Red Army. So if we use the higher figure, because it was 9,000 men had received some kind, or men and women qualifications. If we take the larger figure, out of 34 million Soviet Red Army soldiers, 1.25% may have had some kind of sniper training, which in fact ties with the same kind of data you get for British, German, and American units, which I'll come to later on, is that generally there were designated marksmen or snipers, 2 per company. Although the British Army from sort of 1943-44 onwards started moving their snipers to battalion strength rather than company strength. But we're looking at a low percentage of people who are in some way defined as part of this role. Now, in Eastern Front, what we have to take on board is the fact that the sniper story is a massive part of the propaganda, because it's a way of instilling fear in the enemy, because the Soviets would have the Germans believe that wherever the Germans are, no matter how remote they are on the masses of length of the Eastern Front, there's always that possibility that a Soviet Red Army sniper has you in their sights and they'll take you out. And you've seen the movies, you've seen the tropes there. So it's a very good idea, like the British Allied commando raids of 1940 and 41 of creating fear among your enemy, that no matter where you stand, there's always a chance you'll be shot by a sniper. But the data kind of suggests that there weren't actually that many snipers compared to the rest of the military. And there's another image of snipers out in the Eastern Front there. Stalingrad. So the data I found, of the approximately 220,000 German troops in the Stalingrad battle, about 750 were snipers, or as I will correct later on, probably more likely designated marksmen. The Germans absolutely did have sniper schools. They did have people with proper training with scoped rifles, and they were trained in the arts of concealment and stalking and all that kind of stuff there. But you look at that data there, 0.375% of German soldiers in Stalingrad were snipers. So the movie idea of everywhere you go, snipers dueling it out in the warehouses, dueling it out in the forests, the data doesn't suggest that that's actually true. And there's a photo of a German sniper there. The other thing about the German snipers, or again, designated marksmen, is the rifles. And I'll get to the British and Commonwealth troops in a minute. And the thing about the German rifles, and I'll come to this later on, is the scopes they were using, okay? Because I'll get this later on, but often they were fitted with a scope with just 1.5 times magnification. This was a K98. So with 1.5 times magnification, you're not really able to see the target any better than someone holding a rifle using the regular hard iron sights. So if you're using a 1.5 magnification scope, you're going to be shooting someone at 300 or 400 yards, maybe 500 yards, which again is very different from this 1,000-yard shots you kind of think of in the movies. Okay, but before we move into that, this scopes and designated rifles, let's look at the British and Commonwealth forces. Now, it's much harder to find data about training because as people are talking there in the sidebar, you know, every Marine has had some kind of marksman training, and the British and Canadian had a similar system where everybody goes through rifle training and gets some kind of grade on their ability to shoot down a range. Now, whether or not your ability to hit a target means you are sniper trained, well, this is where it gets into the kind of murky areas of language. But the way I've looked at the British and American forces is the production numbers of sniper rifles. So, okay, we all know that the SMLE was being used by the British and Australians at the early part of the war, but let's look at the number 4, so the war economy rifle that the Enfield made. So approximately 4 million made in World War II. And of that, about 25,000 were the number 4Ts. So that's the sniper version with the scope there. So 0.6% of the Enfield rifles in World War II were the sniper type. Now, that doesn't necessarily explain how many were actually issued to people, because snipers become more of a thing in the post-war era. You look at even some of the data about the Americans. By 45, 46, there are many more people being given what we now would call sniper training than there were in 41 and 42, and I'll be reinforcing the idea in a minute. So less than 1% of rifles in the British and the Commonwealth armies were sniper rifles. And that's just talking rifles. Don't forget all the British Army guys who don't have a rifle at all because they're Royal Artillery, they're Royal Engineers, or they have a Sten gun, or they have a Bren gun, or something else. So that's interesting. And also, the American military had a very similar set of data. Now, here's interesting data fact for you. The United States Army began World War II with neither a dedicated sniper rifle or a dedicated sniper training program. So when we're talking about the use of snipers in the American military, it wasn't part of their doctrine. As they start fighting in war, as they start going into North Africa, they realize that the enemy are to some extent using designated marksmen and snipers, and the Americans decide they will do that. Now, the M1 Garand being the ejection and system semi-automatic, you can't use it with a scope easily. So they went back to the Springfield and they designated a scoped version of the Springfield, the M1903A3 sniper rifle. And it was the only kind of designated sniper rifle the Americans used in World War II. But again, look at the numbers. And there's a picture of an American using one of these scoped rifles. Although, interestingly, his helmet looks a bit like a German one in that. When I first saw that photo, and I thought, he's a German, just it's got a camouflage net and a first aid packet or something, but American helmet. So here is data. Just like the Enfield number 4s, about 4 million M1s, I think, were made in World War II. About another 1.5 million were made in the years that followed, and they went all around the world. And we're not talking about M1 Garands as a genuine as a subject. We're talking about sniper rifles, and about 28,365 of the sniper versions of the Springfield made. So 0.7% of the rifles made in World War II by the Americans were sniper rifles. So we're talking about a very low number of of actual sniper rifles made, and that doesn't necessarily mean they're being issued and used in the sniper role. So that's some data about the manufacturing there. And this, my question about that is, does the number of sniper rifles produced indicate how many snipers served? And again, I'm always putting inverted commas around snipers, because this is the crux of this subject here, is when does a designated marksman, expert rifleman become a sniper? And this is the thing. So now here's a scene from Band of Brothers with Shifty Powers and a Valor Studios art print. There's Shifty Powers in foy, or foy if you prefer, taking that shot. Notice how in reality and in the movie he did not have a scoped rifle. He was using a regular M1, and he is someone within the company that the others consider is a better shot than average. Now that's mostly what we're talking about when we're talking about snipers in the Allied army, and indeed to some extent in the German army as well. So that if a shot is required within a situation like in reality there in Foy in the Ardennes, they will call up the guy who's got the better shot and say, look, can you try and get that German out of that window over there? And the guy with a better shot will put it through there. I would say that isn't actually a sniper. That is a person who's a bit of a better shot, taking on a job that is required of him in the moment. You may, watching this, say, no, he is a sniper. This is where it gets into the debate about language and what constitutes a sniper. The German snipers, as I said earlier, the German snipers is what we're talking about, because the majority of books we read about World War II are written by the victors. And JD watching right now, hi JD, talking about the victors, because someone on his comments has been saying it's the victors who write the history. It is true, the victors write the history. So when you're reading a book about Normandy or Italy, like I said at the beginning, you'll read an account of a British soldier and he will say, yeah, and my friend was shot by a sniper. Okay. So as I said there earlier, the scopes the Germans were using mostly didn't offer much magnification. So they're not really snipers in that modern kind of, the way the American sniper, Chris Kyle kind of way we think of these days. They've just got a slight advantage over your regular rifleman without a scope. But this is the crux of today's little show, is snipers or designated marksmen and scouts. And I made a spelling mistake. I should say marksman, not markman there. So that's the thing. And I'll get to my conclusion in a minute, right? The Germans are on the back foot through much of the second half of the North Africa campaign, the Italy campaign, the Normandy campaign, into Belgium, into Germany. And what the Germans often did is they would leave some kind of rear guard element to try and cover their asses when they're falling back. Now, that would sometimes be someone being assigned that role. So a company commander would say, right, you, Gunther, Karl, stay in that village there. There's a church tower there. Try and buy us a bit of time when the Allies move into the village there. And then if you can, get out. But if not, you're kind of sacrificed for the cause. Now, this is what we're talking about when we read about these accounts of my friend Jim was shot by a sniper. I would say in these situations, the person is shot by a lone rifleman or part of a cut-off unit or a rear guard action. So imagine, the British pushing in from Sword Beach, for example, on D-Day through Colville, now called Colville, Montgomery, towards Pegasus Bridge. As you're pushing at speed, inevitably, Germans are getting cut off because they're unable to fall back with their comrades, and so they would maybe surrender, or maybe they would take up a position in a building or in a little copse of trees, and they would try and take pot shots at the Allies or the British soldiers who are bearing down on them. Now, in this situation, I would say that they are not a sniper as we would think about in the designation we gave at the beginning of the show. Someone with a proper scope, with a proper sniper training, with all the camouflage suit, the ability to conceal and move. They're just simply a single person taking shots with a rifle. And that's basically my point in this, is that when you look at the fact that in, for example, the Normandy campaign, about 80% of all combatants were killed by a weapon they didn't see. So indirect fire, mortars, artillery, that's what results in the deaths of most people. And that you could probably take that statistic around most of World War II. A lot of the Marines killed landing in the island hopping campaign were killed by artillery, indirect fire. the sniper aspect is basically a trope that we have come to believe because of movies, because of war games, because of video games, war gaming, this. So yes, the Allies all had sniper trained to some degree expert riflemen, and of course, since the proliferation of movies and video games, people have gone to great lengths to search for the photos that do show. There's a couple of British Army snipers in the Normandy campaign who are using captured SS camouflage, which would have caused all sorts of confusion. They were in the British 3rd Division. And, and what their role normally is, and this is where we're talking about this designation between sniper, designated marksman, and scout, is that the British Army, for example, would put 8 or 10 men of a section in battalion strength as part of a sniper section. Now, that would only have 2 sniper rifles. The other guys there with binoculars, regular weaponry, and what they're often doing is scouting. So they're moving ahead, they're moving independently, they're moving ahead of a British advance, or they're staying behind if there's a German counterattack. And what they're doing is they're trying to understand the enemy movements. Now, if during that process there is an opportunity to take a shot at an enemy commander or a radio man, you might do that. You might do that with your scoped rifle. But more often than not, and you can read about this in David O'Keefe's book about the Black Watch snipers. The Black Watch snipers are rarely actually used as a sniper in the way we would understand that term today. They are scouting, they are reconnaissance. And we always talk about reconnaissance troops in that if you engage the enemy, you've kind of failed. Reconnaissance is about moving forward, finding information about the enemy, and then moving back and telling the people with the bigger weaponry where the enemy are. So a platoon of British reconnaissance corps in armored cars, moving forward to find out where the enemy armor is. If they end up having to engage German tanks with their 37mm armored car guns, they've kind of failed in their remit. Their idea is to move forward, get information, relay it back. And that is mostly, I would claim, what designated marksmen are doing in the Allied armies in World War II. There are photos of guys with scoped rifles. You will, of course, read stories of enemy kills made by the Allies against German and Japanese soldiers. You will, of course, read about Allied soldiers being killed by enemy snipers. But my argument is most of them were actually killed by either a single rifleman, a scout, a designated marksman, or simply a guy cut off or from his unit or as part of a rear guard action. So there we are. I'll just look at your comments now before I wind things up. Finland and the Winter War, that is probably the conflict of World War II where the most sniper action took place. Yeah, and Simo Häyhä there was, the Finnish sniper there. But again, if you look at the conflict overall, the number of confirmed kills he got is nothing compared to the number of men killed on both sides in conventional battles. The large scale infantry assault, etc., etc., etc. So. And yeah, as we say, there's David says, I've seen lots of interviews of vets who say they had snipers shooting at them everywhere and they were met by lots of snipers. That's the thing. Are they, or is it just a word they use? You come under a rifle shot rings out and you say, damn, enemy sniper. That's my point. In most cases, I'm not going to give you an exact percentage of how many times I would think that claim is false, but let's say 90% of the times you read an account that the sergeant was shot at by a sniper or the officer was taken out by a shot by a sniper. It's not a sniper. It is a enemy soldier with a rifle as part of some kind of either rear guard or scouting unit. So that's it. I'm going to keep these shows short and sweet. I would really welcome your comments here about whether or not you think I've got it right or wrong. But at the end of this show, basically the idea I want to give to you is that accept the fact that with military history, words have entered the lexicon that we just use, and sometimes the use of that word should be questioned. So again, we came under fire by 88s. We were shot at by a sniper. We were terrified of those Tiger tanks around the corner in every village in Normandy, etc., etc., etc. Be critical, be discerning. Look at what you're reading, look at what you're being presented, and consider yourself, is that really what's being said here, or is it a use of a word that we've come to accept is being used in a kind of a different kind of way? The snipers in the ETO, PTO, I would say it depends whether you count the ETO as including the Eastern Front or not. As I said earlier, if you're including the fighting, when the Soviets are pushing the Germans back towards Germany, that's well into Europe now. I would say there's a lot more in the ETO compared to the PTO. Again, the Japanese would, in the Pacific, use lone riflemen. Perhaps they had volunteered to sort of sacrifice their lives to try and hold a pass through a particular army, or they would island, or they would go up a tree, shimmy up a tree to try and delay the American advance. But I would again say that isn't actually a sniper. That is a rifleman who's been given instructions to do that job. And sniper is a word we have used to describe what he's doing falsely. Okay, so there we are. I'm going to end it now. I wasn't expecting to do a show today. If you're new to the channel, particularly if you're finding these shorter videos, that there'll be lots more coming your way next week, and you like the shorter format videos, why don't you try one of the longer format videos? I understand people have busy lives and they haven't always got time, but our regular programming here on World War II TV is of an hour to an hour and a half, where the historian comes on and talks about one aspect of the Second World War. That's what I do mostly. That's what I will continue to do. These shorter shows are designed to kind of bring people in a bit. So snipers in World War II, I would say most of the cases where a sniper is referred to, it's not really a sniper. With that, I will leave it there. Ipswich are away at Middlesbrough in about half an hour's time. I'll watch the football, and I will see you all on Monday. I've seen the PowerPoints for the presentations on Monday's myths. We're talking about the Spitfire not winning the Battle of Britain. We're talking about the Battle of Atlantic not being quite as close a run thing as people think it is. And we're talking about the worst bomb group in the 8th Air Force that was kind of made legendary by the Gregory Peck film 12 O'Clock High. That's just Monday's shows. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you next time. It's Paul Woodadge for World War II TV saying enjoy the rest of your weekend. Cheers. Bye.